Right now, according to the updates, Bloodborne on PC has matured to a much better and stable and playable state. A lot of folk on the PlayStation platform and even on PC have been talking about the possibility that a Bloodborne game can come into the pipeline. I made a video a while ago where I pointed out some sales data and looked at Bloodborne sales and how it wasn't necessarily the most impressive, as well as even other games like Ratchet and Clank, which sold less but still got other games in their pipelines. And, some people have pointed out a few things according to, say, the recent events in the gaming market. So let's go ahead and talk about those things, and let's go ahead and point out where some of my arguments then, need a little bit more context to be robust. So right now, Bloodborne GPU is not tanking that much, and the brightness is normal. Lightning has been fixed today on the Shad PS4 emulator. Apparently, some people have said that Bloodborne is more than likely going to return back to the PlayStation ecosystem. That the problem right now that we're seeing is simply that it appears that they want to use it for a PlayStation 6 launch. However, there is another challenge as well, because this also adds to the whole nightmare, simply because now From Software has now joined the league of 25 million copies of a game, league of developers / whatever you want to call them. And Elden Ring now poses, in my opinion, a very interesting question for people who, in a sense, probably never played the Souls games. The Souls games have always been a niche style of game. I think Elden Ring is by far the one Souls game we will say that brought it all mainstream. At first, the Souls community didn't know what to do with the fact that a lot of people were, flowing into a game like Elden Ring. But apparently it became okay, let's, basically see how this goes. And what even made things better was the more people that came in, the more people that found out that they actually like this genre of game, simply because there's something about the beauty of the difficulty, the struggle, the art, and everything that really does make the game resonate to anybody who's playing it. Now, based on the sales data that Bloodborne, this was sales data that leaks, that Bloodborne sold only about 7 million copies after so many years and all of the above, Elden Ring now provides a springboard. And those sales, metrics of that time may not necessarily be reflective of anything right now. However, here is the challenge and here is the problem. I have a feeling that From Software is going to want to take this whole thing to a whole different level. From Software right now understands the billion-dollar game proposition. If they were to give Sony another remaster, remake, sequel, with no guarantees that they would be able to control certain things that they like or will benefit them, they know that that's going to pretty much stifle them. On the other hand, Sony knows that in order for them to actually give them that remake, remaster, or sequel, they have to put up a lot of money, simply because what's at stake right now is the fact that, it's a bunch of money that would need to be put on the table from Software. From Software also realizes that their strength as a third-party developer under a third-party publishing arm, they understand very importantly that multi-platform is the game changer. Everybody needs to go ahead and take a look at this. When Bloodborne first came out, its biggest challenge, to be very honest, more than anything else, was exclusivity. Some people have cited and said, Bloodborne came out at a time where not many people had the PlayStation 4. Agreed. But there was no PC port. There was not even, at least an Xbox port. So the exclusivity, for the most part, did it in. It came out in a console base that was not necessarily big yet, nor established. And so understanding that paradigm, especially now where you can't even, brag anymore if you're of a certain caliber, about 7 million copies in terms of your game, then I think that From Software would probably want a PC port day one, and also want possibly an Xbox port, because this is something that is very, very, in my opinion, important for them. And also, it's not just important for them, it's important for their brand, because their brand is now basically blown up because of the availability of their game on any platform almost that you want to go ahead and play the game. In fact, if anybody doubts that From Software has not benefited nor has learned from the availability of games and that being influential, then here is Dark Souls remastered on the Nintendo Switch. Yes, being able to get your game as far and wide as possible is a very strong strategy for anyone who is about making video games. Exclusivity is only designed to drive a specific and very unique business strategy. And so PlayStation wanting Bloodborne on their platform was simply to be able to harness the Souls-like fans to pick up their console. Right now, From Software is not in that business of, you having to drive your agenda when they got games to make, and when they have, for the most part, money at the end of the day to also earn in this regard. This is why I think they're more than likely going to make it challenging for PlayStation to get Bloodborne on its own terms. Now, you may argue and say, well, people may be able to pick up their PlayStations and, a PlayStation if they're interested in it. But, be very honest, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Bloodborne emulated on the PC, right? That's where you're going to have the majority of the Souls-like fans. Now, if you look at the, what's going on here, does it look like people that are trying to get Shad PS4 to work are going to go pick up a PlayStation 5? That's not likely. And also, when you think about Elden Ring, you always, you can always tell that the majority, of the player base is the player base that actually was the PC platform. Remember, Elden Ring sold the most on PC by itself. It clocked about 10 or so million copies, if not more, at the end of the day. So again, these, in my opinion, are going to be some of the challenges that will be faced heavily by a Bloodborne, remake or whatever that is exclusive to PlayStation. And PlayStation owns the Bloodborne name. So unless they want to play ball with From Software might be open to that, category. Then there's also the advantageous side in terms of From Software just making an original IP that is, not Bloodborne per se, but has a lot of really cool elements that they can leverage, and then they'll call it their own game. So another thing too is they might just go ahead and say, we're sorry, Sony, we might not be able to do any more of this. What's actually here is we have like these 20 games that we're working on, and we got them all lined up back to back, so it's going to be very challenging for us to make your game, because they realize that there's an advantage for them in terms of ensuring that their game is actually made, and Sony can go ahead and do whatever it wants to do. Then you also have another proxy that you got to look at too. Well, Sony can say, well, it's our game. Well, why don't you just give the game's code to Bluepoint in order for them to be able to go ahead and, or some other studio to go ahead and make the game? But here's the problem. They only delivered the game. They more than likely did not deliver the tools for the game. This is a very important distinction that I think everybody has to pay very close attention to, because the game is one thing, but the tools for the game is a whole different beast. Now, when I say the tools for the game, let me go ahead and, just give you guys a very base or surface level explanation as to exactly what it is that I mean. So let's say you were From Software. Your job was to develop Bloodborne. You developed Bloodborne and you delivered Bloodborne to PlayStation as a fully playable experience. Maybe they paid you for support of the game and said, okay, you're going to support the game for so long to ensure that any bugs or whatever is worked out. And everybody said, sure, no problem, we're going to do it. And then as all of it was all settled and done, they came to you and said, hey, man, we'd like to do something extra in regard to this game that is outside of the initial contract. They'd have to go back and modify contracts to get you to actually take time out of the work you were doing to actually do anything, like a 60 FPS patch, which they'd have to work on stability and all that stuff. And so that's one aspect. And now the only people that can actually do it is you guys, because you guys have the tools that were used to make the game. When I mean tools, what I mean, ladies and gentlemen, is simply the engine and all that it entails. Let me give you guys an example of what I'm talking about. So this is Epic Games Store. Unreal Engine, ooh, I hope I don't go NDA myself, yikes. Unreal Engine has like different versions. The different versions that the engine has can actually be used to make different games, but you can actually modify an engine for your own personal needs. For example, Mortal Kombat 1 runs on a modified Unreal Engine version. It's a version that NRS pretty much modded for their own game. Yes, they still have to pay a licensing fee to Epic Games, but that modded version of the Unreal Engine is unique to them because they've added their own specific tools that they needed to make the Mortal Kombat game. Inside of From Software, their tools modded for their specific uses are there and are their own proprietary property. In order for them to release it is going to be an insane amount of money that's going to inspire them to go ahead and do something of such. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that getting the tools is where the challenge is going to be in terms of, say, Sony just taking that and giving that to somebody else. Now, yes, they did with Demon Souls, and they were able to get a remaster and or a remake and all of the above. Yeah, they can also do a Bloodborne remake, and just say, you know what, From Software, no worries. Our guys are going to do it using our own Sony proprietary tools. However, here's the challenge. It's going to take and cost so much money because the developers are not making Demon Souls anymore. Demon Souls, if you compare it, say, in the time that it was made and the technology that we have now, that game is not really, for a competent team, that game is not going to be hard to make. I mean, as proven by BluePoint. They took a remake and they were able to capture the soul of that game. However, a game like Bloodborne is slightly more intricate in the way that things work. Character models are interesting. The art style is interesting. All of those things are interesting. And in today's currency, you will be blowing like another 200 million to be able to make a game like that. To then keep that game as an exclusive is also going to be another fight. So you're not only going to be talking about time, you're going to be talking about money and risk. And PlayStation right now is not in a position where they actually want to deal with such risk. Unless, of course, they're already making it and they're already dealing with the risk and they already, sanctioned a remake or a sequel or whatever with another studio. And we just don't know, which leads us back to the first theory that it might be a PS6 launch at the end of the day. But Bloodborne coming, in that regard and having, say, a follow-up to the IP has many challenges that it has to face. These are not challenges that PlayStation cannot deal with, but PlayStation has been chasing a different bag all this while, like Concord and all of this other stuff. And yes, those things have really cost them. And now the fans are looking and saying this is crazy. However, it doesn't even really matter at the end of the day because the PC community and the, modding community and the emulation community are basically taking matters into their hands, and they don't seem to, care enough to wait for, Sony and PlayStation to go ahead and do anything about it. Thanks for watching the video. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.